Bree, why don't you go first? What is the topic? Set the table.
We went to go and speak with a bunch of the veteran departments for the state of New Hampshire yesterday and presented the book that I wrote last year about everything that has to do with a VA loan and using it in today's real estate market. We touched on a lot of different things about the VA loan specific. Len touched on a lot of the legal aspects and how you can take title as a VA, and we just kind of had a great time.
One of the more poignant moments that I have been a part of in quite some time was a closing that we had in our office involving a veteran who was buying a home and who was obviously disabled. And he declared to the entire room that he had made a series of offers, unsuccessfully, VA offers, or offers disclosing that he was going to be utilizing VA financing. And those offers were rejected, and some of the listing agents were candid about the fact that the offers were rejected because of the VA financing that he intended to use, so that he ultimately went conventional and didn't take advantage of a VA loan. And because he was disabled, there would have been no funding fee. So this is like some of the most attractive financing available to any borrower anywhere. And this particular veteran, it really was emotional. It was an emotional moment for him, and it was an emotional moment for me and others in the room, that this veteran who had served his country and who was disabled could not utilize VA financing because he couldn't get his offer accepted. So he went the conventional route and paid more, not only for the home, but for the financing. And there were many people in attendance last night that were moved by that anecdote, and who, one of whom even said, we need legislation to protect veterans, and that's, a story for another day. But nevertheless, it was a great event last night.
Yeah, it was an awesome event.
It really
and
was.
That story is it's sad because it's not just him. I mean, it happens to veterans all the time with their financing, and people are scared of VA loans, but that's just because they're uneducated about them. I would say a VA loan is probably even better than a conventional sometimes. Mm-hmm. I mean, as far as closing, I've never not closed on a VA loan. Mm-hmm. Have we? No. Every VA loan, and I only do VA loans for the most part. I mean, here and there, a few in between, but there's usually never any issues with them. They close seamlessly. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've never...
It's true. We talked about this. I mean, basically with a VA loan, you've got a pest inspection.
That's it. That I pay for.
Which is really, in this part of the country, there are parts of the country where termites can be a real problem, but not in the Northeast. So that really, it's not quite a non-issue, but close. And then of course you have the appraisal, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions about a VA appraisal, that it's going to take forever, or it's a very difficult appraisal, or there's a lot of scrutiny upon the property. I don't think any of that is true.
I would say VA appraisals are quicker than conventional right now, honestly.
It's true.
Which is part of that sad portion, that VA offers aren't getting accepted as much as conventional offers. Mm-hmm. So all the conventional appraisers are super busy and backed up, but whereas VA appraisals really aren't that backed up. I mean, we had clear to close on a 30-day close 10 days before closing. Mm-hmm. Because the appraisal came in early. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, and a VA appraisal isn't an inspection. It's them going to make sure that it's not falling apart. Mm-hmm. When they're not going to lend on something that's obviously not finished with walls up and doesn't have heat, water, and electricity. I mean, other than that.
I agree. One of the things that we talked about last night is, it doesn't happen all the time, but I know of conventional loans that have fallen apart, essentially, collapsed at the 1 yard line, to use a football metaphor. Transaction falls apart, borrower loses their job, any number of different things go wrong. Loan crashes, transaction is not going to go forward, and it's crying towels for everybody involved. I can't really think of a situation where that's happened on a VA loan. So I think not only is a VA loan not a risky proposition and not a difficult or burdensome loan for the parties to the transaction, I think actually it's kind of a sure thing. I think once the veteran has been initially pre-qualified for the loan and the paperwork is in and their financials have been examined,
yeah, it's pretty much done.
That loan is going to close. So if anything, not only should a veteran using VA financing not be rejected out of hand, I think if anything, that kind of financing frankly should go to the front of the line, because I think if you're evaluating several different borrowers that are utilizing different types of financing, I think the veteran going VA is probably your best bet. When you're buying real estate, I think it's very important to have a good team. And I think if there's any one thing that translates into a successful closing, it's having a good team. And unsuccessful closings, I think, are usually born of some problem with the personnel, with the lineup. You just didn't have the right realtor, you didn't have the right loan officer, or you didn't have the right closing attorney. So it's important to have a great team. And I think part of having a great team, there's a little luck involved, but I think there's also some due diligence and there's some research involved. Know a little bit about the people that you're working with, see what their qualifications are, see what their experience is, make sure that you're dealing with, quality, top shelf, first-rate professionals. And if you are, I think you're likely to have a very successful closing.
No, I definitely agree. Any one of those people can throw a deal from going through smoothly to falling and crumbling at the last second. I think having other specialties outside of real estate really tie into different experiences that you're going to have as a person. Me personally, I have a degree in building construction fire science, so I bring that to the table. I also have lending experience. I was in the military. I have a whole bunch of medical experience, and I've done a whole bunch of careers before I became a real estate agent. So I have a vast knowledge of different things, but to real estate, what really kind of brought it home was the building construction and fire science, because it gives me the ability to portray what I do know and learned into my clients and make them feel comfortable buying a house. And then, you bring a bunch of different legal experience into one now that you just focus on real estate. But Len has been doing law for over, 15 years?
Close to 27 years total.
Over 15, close to 27.
Don't let my youthfulness deceive you.
But still, that's a lot of experience. And I'm not saying that attorneys are horrible if they're new, but I'm just saying that if you have someone that's been practicing real estate law for X amount of years, over 20 years, he's seen most scenarios that are gonna arise. We have a few here and there, like the people that had to get married to take title of the house in VA, but
it's
things
as good a reason
happen.
as any.
But from there, I think that plus a good loan officer that we can all work cohesively together, I think is very important. Having a relationship between me and Len, but also having a relationship with the lender that I use or the other real estate agent that is selling the house that my clients are buying, like that, everybody working together is what makes a real estate transaction happen.
There's no question, and this is a point that I really want to emphasize. In any given real estate transaction, you are likely to encounter not only issues of real estate, that's front and center, but it's possible that you will have to address issues of litigation, business law, liens and attachments, bankruptcy. Any one of these things could come into play on a real estate transaction or on a title. So having an attorney that's well versed in these areas, in 27 years of practicing law, I've handled litigation. I've gone to trial on cases. I've filed bankruptcies and also represented creditors in bankruptcies. I've attached properties and I've had attachments on properties discharged. So I have practical legal experience dealing with all of these different matters. So it's not theoretical and there isn't anybody that I need to go ask about it. It's something that I have firsthand practical experience with over the course of, again, a 27-year legal career.
Which is super important. If you find an attorney that doesn't know all that and hasn't dealt with it firsthand, one, they're either going to have to start looking through a book, they're going to have to call somebody, or they're going to have to research it, and that's just going to prolong whatever you're trying to do with that attorney in the first place, So Massachusetts and New Hampshire, coming into the spring of 2022, we're looking at people still paying over list price, people are still covering appraisal gaps, and people are still waiving inspections. It's still a volatile market with hopes of getting better with the interest rates going up and more inventory coming soon.
I think what I'm seeing is, I think January, first of all, just 2021 was extraordinary. It was just off the hook.
Yeah.
Great, everybody had a great year. Everybody that I know of had a great year. First month of 2022, January, a little soft. I think that was our experience, and that's what we're kind of hearing through the grapevine. Not bad, not great. It could be COVID. I mean, I hate to fall back on that old excuse, but it's possible that the latest variant took some people out of the equation. There are probably some people that wanted to list their homes but didn't. There may be agents came down with something, so they weren't able to participate in that process. So I don't think we can completely rule that out. And then in terms of predictions for the future, this is one prediction I'll make. I'm not 100% sure. It's like any prediction. There's a little bit of guesswork involved. But it's possible, I think, that we're going to start to see some distressed properties coming to market. I think there's been a lot of economic devastation associated with the pandemic. There's been a great and horrible, regrettable loss of life, which is a part of the equation. We're handling a number of transactions right now involving estates and deceased parties, some parties who have passed during the process of bringing that home to market. So the purchase and sales agreement was actually signed by the seller, but then the seller passed prior to the closing, which means we had to take a detour and go to probate court. So it can't be ruled out or overlooked as a factor. It is a factor. It's in the equation. A lot of economic devastation, a lot of breadwinners who have lost their positions or fallen ill. So I realize this is somewhat somber, and we don't want to obviously be, hit any negative notes here. But the fact of the matter is that there are some properties that are going to come to market under circumstances that we would characterize as being distressed or forced. So that's in the mixture as well. So if you are facing foreclosure, in my experience, when foreclosures were prevalent, there was a depressed real estate market, which was the backdrop to these foreclosures. So a person facing foreclosure, if they wanted to sell the property ahead of foreclosure, they were not selling under ideal market conditions because they were essentially in a depressed real estate market. So we have a lot of foreclosures which have been brought about by the pandemic, and a lot of other foreclosures that would have gone forward sooner but for the pandemic and the moratorium. So we have this backlog of foreclosures. But what we do not have under these circumstances is a depressed real estate market. We have a very lively and very up real estate market, an elevated real estate market. You might say a super elevated real estate market. So this is a real estate market where you can put your property on the market and sell it almost instantly on your terms without a lot of conditions or contingencies being imposed upon you by the buyers. So the silver lining for you if you're facing foreclosure is that this is not a depressed market, and you will be able to get top dollar for your home if you can bring yourself to sell it, and you should.
And even if you're not facing full foreclosure yet, and maybe you're approaching that short sale bracket of maybe your short sale's at $400,000 and your house is worth around $410,000, people that are listing houses at $410,000 are seeing close to $450,000 for their house at this point, $440,000, depending on the area. I mean, and from there's also investors that are drastically buying homes and grabbing up everything that they can, that maybe your house needs a renovation and a kitchen and a bathroom and something and some paint, and people will pay another extra $150,000 for that house. So I see a lot of flips going on in today's market where people are just buying a house and 9 months later it's relisted and looks absolutely different than what it looked like 9 months ago. So what is a VA loan? A VA loan is a mortgage that is issued by private lenders. You can use a bank, you can use a credit union, you can use a whole bunch of different sources that will issue you a VA loan to buy a property. It's not actually done through the VA. You're not going to have to call the VA and wait on hold for like 5 years to hear that they said, okay, we're going to let you buy a house. It's backed by the VA and done through private lenders, where the private lender is going to contact their contact within the VA to mend both together in the background that you're never actually going to have to deal with as the borrower, but they connect in the background and share information to allow you to buy a house with 0% down and virtually no other fees other than a funding fee that you can roll into your actual mortgage. The only thing you're gonna have to pay when closing is a home inspection if you're gonna get it. The pest inspection, the VA borrower cannot pay for. As a veteran myself, I pay my clients' pest inspections because it just makes it easier for everybody. And the only other thing is your appraisal, but that's part of your closing costs. And that's really the only thing you're gonna have to pay for is your closing costs and your home inspection when using a VA loan in today's market.
I can say is that the closing costs for a VA loan, in my experience, are no higher or lower than for any other type of loan.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a legal fee, there's title insurance, there's owners and lenders title insurance, which do not vary based upon which type of lending program you're going through, so they're not higher or lower for a VA loan. But then as far as other closing costs, again, that's an area I really don't know.
That's me.
Yeah.
I mean, well, there's a funding fee that gets rolled into the loan, and then the lender charges some fees. There's some state tax. You're going to pay prepaids, which is, depending on Mass or New Hampshire, you're going to pay either 3 months in the rear of taxes and 3 months ahead for New Hampshire, right? So they're going to have to pay to divvy up wherever you fall on your closing of the prepaids of taxes that the seller has already paid. You're going to have to pay a year of homeowner's insurance. You pay the month that you're closing and prepaid interest to whatever lender you use because you don't have a mortgage payment for about 2 months, and you'll pay, when you pay your mortgage payment on February 1st, you're paying for all of January. You're not paying for February. You pay in the rear. So you're paying for the interest of that month that you're not paying a mortgage payment. There's a bunch of different closing costs, and I mean, you can always head over to my website and there's a breakdown of closing costs on there.
It's true. No, you make a good point. So in terms of closing costs, right, because that's a recurring question, not just for veterans with VA loans, but really
Everybody.
for all borrowers. And we get these questions all the time. What are my closing costs? And it's really kind of a loaded question because there are our closing costs as the real estate attorney or title company, which are limited, frankly. I mean, we charge a legal fee, also known as a closing fee, settlement fee, attorney's fee, title fee. I've seen it called all of those different things. There's title insurance, both lender's title insurance and owner's title insurance, and then truly miscellaneous and frankly quite small transactional fees, like fees for
$30.
FedEx, overnighting a payoff, or a recording fee at the Registry of Deeds of $25 to $50. So those are the closing costs that we charge. But then sometimes people will be like, no, I don't mean just the closing costs that you charge. I mean, like, what are all the closing costs? Well, I can tell you what the transfer taxes will be. In New Hampshire, you do pay transfer taxes as a buyer, but you don't pay transfer taxes as a buyer in Massachusetts, so it's somewhat state specific. Bree highlighted some important issues with respect to property taxes. You're typically, if you're escrowing, which you would be on a VA loan and a lot of other loans, many loans, you're going to be paying some taxes and some insurance monies into escrow to fund that account. And then if the seller has already paid a tax bill, you're going to be reimbursing the seller, so that becomes a closing cost. And then, of course, there's a whole other universe of costs that are
Propane,
charged.
oil.
Those would be reimbursements between the parties, right, which can be substantial. Sometimes a propane reimbursement charge at closing can be $600 or $700. For people on a limited budget, they may not have seen that coming. It's like, whoa, I didn't expect that. And that sometimes just comes out of nowhere. Like the seller will just say at the closing, oh, by the way, there's $700 worth of propane at the property. Did you bring a check for that? But what I'm talking about are the other closing costs that are within the lender's discretion to set. Appraisal, that can be $500 or more, underwriting fees, credit report fees, points, sometimes there's an actual charge for the financing itself, so any number of different things. So when people are wondering, what are my closing costs, that's a loaded question. A lot of those costs are disclosed by the lender, thankfully, so the lender will disclose them to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's lender specific too. I mean, one lender may charge you $4,000 and the other lender may charge you $5,000. It's different between each lender, so when you get asked closing costs, it has to be verified through your lender. I mean, and it's town specific too. I mean, what your closing costs are going to be in Nashua, New Hampshire versus Merrimack, New Hampshire are going to be vastly different. Or between Air, Mass and Cambridge, Mass, I mean, your closing costs are going to be like this on a table because of the difference in taxes.
True.